How's it going? I'm Greg Cummings, CEO of Power 100 and Next 100, and I'm your host today on PowerChat, and we have Bill Conlon with Westlake. Bill, thanks for joining, brother. I appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are, but we have a very special topic today about Paul Burleson, Paulie B, however you know him out there in the world. That's what we're here to talk about because he's being inducted into the Legends Award from Dave Yoho. So, Bill, thanks so much for taking the time. I know how busy you are.
Well, Greg, thanks for having me. You're right. This is a pretty special topic for us. Paul Burleson getting into the Hall of Fame, getting into something that only maybe one or two other manufacturers ever gotten into. So it really is a big deal, and it's something we're really proud of here over at Westlake Royal Building Products.
Yeah, no doubt. It's been a pleasure to know Paul from my side. He's joined our advisory board. He's coached us just like he's coached the thousands, tens of thousands of people all across the country. But I want to kind of go back to maybe the early days, like when you met him. What was your first impression? Where did you first meet him, Bill? And and what was your first impression on Paul?
Well, that's an interesting story. So we were working for the Crane family at the time, and we had a really good independent distributor down in Alabama, American Wholesale. And Mike Turk, who I had known from a previous life, Mike was the general manager at the time, et cetera. And I was going down to see him. I had a sales guy that we had removed from the territory, so I was kind of backfilling it, working a little bit more in the territory than I normally would. And Mike and I were having dinner right across the street. There's only one Mexican restaurant in the area, right across the street from the hotel, right across the parking lot. And he says to me, "Hey, I got somebody I want you to meet tonight." So we're sitting there, Mike and I, and here comes this skinny guy walking in, and he gives Mike a big hug. And I'm like, so I get introduced to Paul that evening. We met again the next morning. The following week, I made him an offer, and the rest is history. He's here at Westlake Royal Building Products and has been since 2000.
What was your first impression of him? Was this an automatic hire, a no-brainer, or was it a gamble? For those of us that know Paul, maybe we can imagine it might have been a gamble in the beginning. Is this guy for real?
It was a gamble.
Paul, he is definitely for real. But what was the beginning years like?
Yeah, it was a big gamble. So first of all, Paul has grown up a lot. And when I say grown up, I don't mean maturity. I mean, he was a skinny kid back then, really he had a nickname, Bones. It was because of his size. And so he kind of comes popping in. So you first see him and you're like, wow. And Mike Turk had really spoken highly about him. But once you get to talking to him, right, it's just like now. You look at Paul and you say, then you get to talk to him. Then he starts to impress you in his work ethic and the way he goes about doing things. And that was the early part of the conversation. But you got to remember, back then I was only the regional director. So I still had to bring him to my corporate, have him interview with a multitude of people, Jim Zeminski, Jeff Cabbage. So again, wasn't a slam dunk. I happened to be out in Columbus at the time. Paul comes, he interviews, and I'm sitting with Jim Zeminski, and he said, "Hell no." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "You're going to bring this guy on?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "What's wrong with that? He wants to be the best vinyl salesman he can possibly be." I said, "Why wouldn't we take a chance?" He goes, "He's all yours." And I said, "All right, he's all mine." And we've done some pretty special things since then.
Yeah, I had a chance to talk to Jim about the interview. You brought Paul up there and you're like, "All right, I like this guy a lot. Here's what it is, comes highly recommended." And then he sits in Jim's office and he says what you just said, right? "I want to be the best vinyl salesman in the world," or something. He said some outlandish comment. But the funniest part about it that we learn years, maybe decades later, he was dead serious.
That was his number one thing.
So talking to Paul, he realized his story was, he had to do something to be great at in order to make sure that his life was the way he wanted it to be. And he didn't like the way his life's, his beginning years were. And that really motivated him and drove him to come out of a tough childhood to be the guy, the man, the person, that he is today is truly incredible.
I don't know that I've ever met anybody with more drive to succeed. And, there's a lot of people that are probably a little more talented than Paul, maybe even a little more talented than me. but the way that Paul worked it and the way that he continued to take it to the next level, and realistically, we've done things that no other manufacturer has ever done. And it all began because Paul and I were having a conversation. And it was years after we had been hired. He was probably, for several years, he would carry 2 or 3 hats at Crane. First, he was just a territory manager. And then he started taking on a little bit of national accounts plus running a territory. Because back then with the Cranes, small company, we couldn't just put a national guy in place. So worked into that, took on more and more accounts. Paul came back to start working for me directly again. We were sitting over a holiday break up in New England. And Paul says, we have to learn to flip the script and get some real influence on the contractor. So we started talking about, I said, Paul, what does that really look like? And he said, well, the thing we do so well is train. And, everybody expects it, but nobody does it right. And so we started going through the whole thing. And he goes, that's what I'm going to focus on. And, 8, maybe 9 years now since he started to focus on it, here we are, and he's going into the Hall of Fame. Pretty impressive stuff.
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, roughly, how many people do you think he's trained? I mean, I know the number is probably almost impossible to add up, but what would your underestimate be?
Well, I would tell you, if you say how many people was he involved in training?
Yeah.
So whether he was with somebody else in the room by himself, not trained the trainer, right? But just who he actually touched, it's got to be 20,000. I bet you that's on the low side that he's actually touched, though, because Paul's done some rooms where there's been, hundreds of people's in it. So,
yeah, over and over again. I mean, in the 4 short years that I've known him, the guy's on the road every day, talking to thousands every week. I mean, basically, rooms that are packed. He speaks at ABC events, and the room fills up. And I think a lot of it has to do with, it's not just his personality or his gravitas. Like, you want to kind of hear more about what he says, but it's about his constant forward thinking process, right? He never trains on what used to work. He trains on what's going to work today. And I think that's one of the reasons that he's in the Legends Award. That's one of the reasons people really remember him, aside from his outlandish delivery. I mean, if you've ever seen him there, you're just, halfway thankful if he keeps his blazer on, never mind his shirt. But, that's what we love about Paul as well.
That's right. Well, it's interesting that you say it that way. Because when we first started talking about this, it was truly about how do we separate the contractor and trade the contractor to sell their brand, not to so much focus on the manufacturer, how to step away with that. And that was all that one-on-one kitchen, living room sale. And then we were doing it successfully. Paul was training people like Power and Champion, just to name 2, right? And everything he did, he trained. And then COVID kind of hit. And right before COVID, we were doing a lot with trying how to measure a home properly, how to get better data to the actual contractors, et cetera. So then Paul put a whole new spin on it. We sat there and we talked a lot about, he said, hey, we got to get the sale out of the home. We got to do virtual selling. We got to do driveway selling. And we went through that whole spiel. And that actually carried out of COVID. Out of COVID, that really worked out well, et cetera. And then Paul really started to embrace technology about midway through COVID. And as you know now, everything that he runs with is technology, forward thinking, what's going to impact your business next year, 3 years from now.
Yeah, he takes it to another level. Instead of just impacting the people he's training, he's really impacting the industry. I mean, you think about Westlake, building products. I mean, my God, how big you guys are. And the direction that, I don't want to say one guy, but the direction that Paul can help steer this entire ship. Now, I will say this with a grain of salt. We're giving Paul his props. But if Paul were on here right now, Bill, and he's told this to me over and over again, he credits you as one of his main mentors of all of his success, the opportunity that you gave him, the at-bats that you went for him, is just, it gives me chills to even think about him saying that.
Well, that's an amazing compliment. I mean, Paul did need an opportunity and Paul did need some direction, but all his success is truly on him. It was one of those where you point them, then you redirect them, and you point them again. And that's really what we've done. And he's been able to. So again, with Westlake, you talked about the size of Westlake Royal Building Products. Paul has always worked on my side of the business, worked directly for me, et cetera. Well, after we made the acquisition of Boral, we started to expand things. So now Paul has influence on how the go-to market strategy on roof tile, on our manufactured stone, on Da Vinci roofing,
Yeah.
on steel. So Paul's doing a lot trying to go into that channel and influence a different channel, because manufactured stone is sold through a different channel than we deal with day in and day out on the one-step, two-step side.
Yeah, and nowadays the contractors are doing all these different things, and it makes a lot more sense, right? It's a natural evolution that Paul's motor doesn't stop.
That's
You know,
true.
un- unfortunately, you're not going to be able to be at the Yoho Legends Award on Tuesday. I know you have some complications with your shoulder surgery. We don't need to get into all that. But from your perspective, which is probably the most valuable, the most close. Nobody's worked with Paul more directly and longer than you. Really, why do you think that Paul is so deserving of the Legends Award?
Well, I would say it's not just who Paul has influenced one-on-one or in person. His ripple effect is just amazing. Within our own company, he'll talk to a sales guy, and a sales guy will do a presentation, and they'll all reference back to Paul. And that continues to go down the chain, and it doesn't. So I think what makes Paul different is he influences from a different view. He is truly an independent. When he comes out and he works in the marketplace for us, he's working for the product, not for Westlake Royal Building Product, but he truly is a consultant. And then he obviously works and helps us get the thing done. But to have the ability to do what he does every day in, day out, there's not another person that I've ever met that has been able to do what Paul has done in such a short period of time. So that's why I think that he is very much deserves the award.
Yeah, that's so cool to hear. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, okay, if I say I like to look at the positive effect of what Paul's done for Westlake in the industry, but I also said to them, I said to our team, I said, where would Westlake or where would the industry be without Paul?
Wow.
Right. And so you look at a company like Rilla, for instance,
Yeah.
where, Sebastian of Rilla gets up on stage and is like, look, Paulie B is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, I think he said, I don't want to misquote him. Sorry, Sebastian. But he gave him so much credit to Paul's advice and the reason that they've been able to have so much success. But Paul recognized the great product, a great skill, and the evolution, and he wants to stay ahead of it to stay relevant. I wish I could remember all of his fast sayings that he would say. If you ain't growing, you're dying.
Yeah,
Whatever it is,
that's
he's
right.
all over the place.
Yeah,
He's got the hands going and that
that's
wrestle
Paul.
announcer. Yeah.
Yeah.
But you look at it and you say, okay, could Westlake Royal pay or fire, or not fire, but hire somebody that is like him to travel every single week, to go to every single client, big, small, new products? I mean, the self-guidance that this guy has, right? He's
No,
never
we say,
done he's
yeah,
never
we
done
say
just
it,
his job description, has he, Bill?
No, then his job description doesn't even have one anymore. It keeps evolving, right? And that's the thing that makes Paul so special is he can continue to evolve. But there's no way you could, as a manufacturer, I could never hire someone and put him in that role and even have him have any impact. Never mind be someone that goes into the Hall of Fame. And I tell Paul all the time, we're blessed to have him. And I tell my people he's one of a kind. So when Paul decides to go do something else, there is no replacing Paul. That'll just be a blank spot, a holder for us.
Yeah, that's a scary day. The industry might just fold. I don't know.
Well, it'll be a
Um,
long time from now.
oh yeah, he has no plans of stopping anytime soon. If anything, this is just his runway to take off and accomplish even more. Um,
Absolutely.
what type of from again? I want to go back to your perspective. If
Mhm.
we're all about leadership here at Power 100, right? We want to focus on the best leaders, and you are, in fact, one of the best leaders in this industry. I've seen firsthand what you've done with Paul and Westlake, and how you guys have been able to kind of evolve through acquisition, through turbulence, through everything, right? And maintain that course. What advice would you say to somebody out there, that young Paul that's maybe thinking about coming into the industry, um, and having an effect, dreaming big? Because I'm sure you've had this where you've had a new hire come out with you, they watch you do something, or they come into your office and they role play or whatever it is, you're going through training and you're just so damn good at it that the person who's new, the new hire is like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to do that, right?
Right.
But Paul did just the opposite. He stood up and is like, I'm going to be the best one in here, and there's nobody that can stop me. And, how do you coach that? How do you find that, or how do you allow somebody the permission to be that way? And what characteristics allow you to do that in today's world?
Well, for someone new, I don't know. That would be a long road to hoe. For somebody new, I would tell them, don't be afraid to fail, and make sure that when you do fail, you don't do the same failure twice. Paul will always say that he learns from everything he does every day. So, to your point, if you're not learning, you're dying. If you're not dying, you're growing. If you're growing, whatever else it is, right?
Whatever else he says, he's going
So,
to pedal
but
fast till he hits the casket, baby.
there you go. There you go.
That's his
But
that's his MO.
that's the thing, though, with Paul. You couldn't teach that. It's a talent
No.
that was inherited in him. The drive was an inherited in him. What you have to do as a leader is, as you know, you got to recognize it and then get out of his way or get out of their way, but also make sure that you're keeping them going in the right direction. No matter how good we are, you can go off into rabbit holes. And Paul's done a really good job focusing on the next thing and not staying where he is, so he doesn't get stuck. He doesn't go down a rabbit hole. He truly looks forward. And that's something that you can't teach. It is truly instilled in him.
Well, Bill, I appreciate you taking the time. I know how busy you are, brother. I'm very, very sad that I'm not going to be able to hang out with you. I know there's a lot of awesome stuff planned at the event, the Legends event on Tuesday. And but we are at time here. I just want to say thanks again for joining us. And let's close this out. If you were, now that Paul's won this award, what would you say to him right now?
Paul, the one thing I'll tell you, brother, is I'll never be more proud of you than today, except tomorrow when you do something great once again. So enjoy your night.
I love it. I love it. If you want to see more content like this, visit our website, power100.io, or follow us, do everything that you're supposed to do in today's world on social media. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, guys, power up.